My name is Camille Archer. I'm 32 and I'm standing at the far end of my parents' dining room on Christmas Eve with everyone in white and glass pretending nothing important is about to happen. Snow presses the cul-de-sac into a soft silence, the house glitters with lights and crystal. Silverware stops midair as I lift my wine glass. Olivia, polished and proud, sits beside Grant Caldwell, Northline Solutions Chief Executive Officer, both of them basking in the easy applause of relatives who like their heroes obvious. They expect me to play the small, grateful role, soft voice, smaller accomplishments, the family joke. I set my glass down and say, calmly, I'm the woman your company has been begging to meet. The living room television waits like a stage light for whatever I'll point at. Mom's face tightens, Dad's jaw goes hard, and Olivia reaches forward as if to soothe a scandal. I don't sit back down. Before we go any further, tell me where you're listening from and hit subscribe if you want more stories like this. Leave a comment, I'll read them all. Turn on notifications so you don't miss when I post the rest of how this night unfolded. The sedan's tires chew through packed snow as I pull up to the cul-de-sac. White lights pool against drifts, and for a second the house looks as if someone painted every window with soft gold. Mom opens the door in a wool coat, gives me a brisk hug, then steps back as if to judge my outerwear. You'll be in the garage this year, more room inside for guests, she says like it's a practical decision. Her voice is light, but her eyes flick to Olivia as if to confirm the plan. The garage hits me with cold and the same smell it always does, gasoline and old cardboard, a ghost of motor oil in the corners. A metal cot is wedged between golf clubs and a plastic bin labeled ornaments. The blanket on the cot is thin and the pillow looks apologetic. I set down my worn leather notebook and my battered tote with a soft thud that sounds too loud in the still air. My breath fogs in front of me. I touch the blanket like I'm performing a ritual I've performed too many times and tuck my knuckles into my pockets against the cold. Dad walks past with a grin that doesn't reach his eyes. You're tough, kiddo, it's just for a night, he says. His voice is warm because he's trying to be kind. It lands like a bandage that doesn't stick. Olivia hurries by in heels clicking, her laugh bright and arranged. Professor, look again this year, Cam, she teases, and she means well enough that everyone else laughs. I keep my voice mild. I'll be ready in 10. I slide the garage door remote into my pocket like a small, private tool and check my phone. There's a text from an unknown number, insistent and polite, asking for a meeting with the Chief Executive Officer of Northline Solutions. I don't answer. I tuck my leather notebook under my arm. The red ribbon I use to mark a page peeks out like a heartbeat. Out loud, I teach a single community college business class each semester. People call me the teacher in a tone that's both affectionate and dismissive. Inside, the truth is quieter and stranger. I am the founder and chief executive officer of Apex Meridian Group, the parent company that quietly acquired Northline Solutions months ago. I didn't tell them. I learned early that showing off power in my family only invited theft or pity. After college, I trusted someone close, my sister and her boyfriend, and they fed one of my first business ideas to him. He ran with it, took credit, and it nearly ruined me. I lost money I couldn't get back and learned to make silence my armor. I kept one class because I didn't want to forget the people who matter when numbers look pretty. My students are a tether. I see them every week and remember that figures on a spreadsheet are actually people with kids, rent, and sick days. I kept the company hidden because I wanted to build without the noise of who I was to them. Apex Meridian bought Northline through layers, through names that didn't mean much in small conversations. Grant Caldwell answers in his office to a board that reports indirectly to me. Tonight, he's sitting at my family's table, flattering people who have no idea he reports in effect to the very person he's been begging to meet. My silence has been deliberate, not passive. I kept secrets for practical reasons, too. Years ago, my parents almost lost the house. I made a payment no one knew about and let them think they saved it. I didn't want a parade. I wanted the problem solved and the family intact, even if the price was that they never knew who did what. That choice taught me something about power. It isn't a trophy you wave. It's the ability to make a quiet correction and let the world still feel like it's spinning. Tonight, I'm here to correct something else. There are things in this house that will be proof and things that will be symbols. The chipped camping mug someone left in the garage the year Dad took up hiking, it's a small thing, ridiculous and ordinary. I'll bring it into an official room tomorrow and set it beside my papers as a reminder of where they put me. The red wine stain on the white cloth will become a freeze frame of the moment they see me in a new light. I can make it sit there like a question mark until someone answers. The garage door remote in my pocket is the quiet gavel. A click will mark a shift. My leather notebook has printed memos tucked behind the ribbon, a signed note delaying a safety fix, expense logs that list a luxury car and leadership retreats under operations, and a short thread with a student's name, Lauren Pierce, whose child's surgery is scheduled for tomorrow and who was denied paid time off. I have a slide loaded on my phone with my company ID, black type on white, my full name and title, clean and undeniable. Paige, my assistant, is the person who knows how to make private public without a show. She'll be on standby with copies, binders, and a portable projector if the living room TV cooperates. Her texts will come in coded until the signal. I've asked her to keep proof off my parents' home network. The family printer stays untouched tonight. Paper copies will appear elsewhere. These tools are small, ordinary things. Together they make a path. When I slip back into the house, I move like a person who rehearsed being invisible. People compare watches and vacations and place their judgments like ornaments on the tree. I'm assigned the far end of the table, what used to be the child's spot when we were small, because old roles die hard. Olivia brags about a department shake-up, calls it lean and brilliant, and throws a look at me that dares me to speak. My phone buzzes. Paige. She tells me the chief executive officer has been calling a private number listed as owner, and he has sent 3 messages in the last hour asking for 5 minutes. He is desperate to meet the mysterious woman at the top, and he doesn't know where she sits. I text Paige to prepare a clean briefing, 3 pages, simple numbers, a timeline, and a list of people denied leave or safety fixes. She replies with a thumbs-up emoji and an 8 o'clock delivery time. I pass Dad's office and hear the printer in the study. The thought of using it makes my skin prickle. I don't touch anything that belongs to them. Everything tonight has to be contained. I sit near the living room TV so the cast will be a short step, and I tuck the leather notebook under my chair where my hand can find it in the dark. The garage door click in my pocket feels like a drumbeat. I steady myself with a slow breath. The plan is simple: gather facts, put the company's face on the room, name the harm, and offer clear, fair choices. I won't gloat. I won't make it personal. My aim is to protect the people who can't fight for themselves and to give my family, finally, a real picture of who I am. If I miss tonight, the story they'll tell about me, the teacher in the garage, becomes the permanent one. If I do this right, the next memory they'll have is of a room with enough warm beds for everyone, not a cold cot wedged between boxes. The quiet in my chest hardens into something like resolve, and I wait for the soup to be served. Olivia leans toward a guest and whispers something about my thrift store dress. I hear her. It's an unkind little sound wrapped in a compliment. She doesn't even try. Dad is nearby, arranging candles, and when I reach for a nicer glass, he puts up a hand quietly, a polite block that says, "Save those for others. Leave those for guests," he says, gentle and final. The word guests is soft, but it outlines the room, insiders, outsiders, and me positioned somewhere between. I set the chairs up carefully, straightening the linen in the places I'll be permitted to sit later. The heavy folding chairs feel heavier than they should. My phone vibrates once in my pocket. A text from Paige asks if I'm ready. I answer with a short, soon, and slide the phone back into my pocket. At the far end of the table, the chair they put me in has the kind of back that says, "You belong here," at a remove. I touch the calluses on my palms without thinking. In passing, I flip the TV input with the remote in my hand, testing it. The slideshow of family pictures on the screen skips ahead, then returns the way it always does without drawing any attention. A small, private task becomes an anchor. I tuck my leather notebook beneath my chair, the red ribbon peeking out like a quiet pulse. I listen to Dad telling a story I heard last year about a fishing trip, and I let the familiarity smooth out the ache. Then Grant Caldwell walks in, the kind of man who believes his jokes land heavier than they do. He takes up space like someone who pays rent on every room he enters. He tells a loud story about a brilliant Shea cup that saved money at Northline, and the table leans in because it's easy to like someone who sells a tidy narrative. He mentions casually that there's a lady at the top of the company who's incredibly private. We don't even know her name, he says with a grin that asks for curiosity on his terms. He calls me the teacher twice in the same breath, a neat way of making me both familiar and not. He talks about lean operations and building shareholder confidence in language that sounds clean but keeps human detail at arm's length. Olivia sits straighter when he praises her, like a statue adjusting to the light, and she looks at him with the sort of approval that says, "I'm done with anything that makes me look weak." Mom hangs on his words, nodding at the stories about company retreats and turnaround plans, and Dad raises his glass like he's toasting a shared victory. I ask a soft, pointed question. How did the savings look after October? And he brushes me off with a smooth, "Ask Olivia." She's the one who ran it. The dismissal is practiced. It would have stung in college. Tonight I tuck it into my pocket with the remote. The first visible loss arrives like a ritual. Mom announces the sleeping arrangements with the same cheer she uses to serve pie, efficient, unquestioning. "Camille will take the garage again," she says with a laugh that expects everyone to join. Laughter follows, a ripple of old family jokes. Someone offers a camping gag, a cousin holds up his phone and takes a picture of the cot as if it's a charming tableau. The chat in the family group will light up in minutes. I ask for an outlet in the garage to charge my phone. Dad says, "Everyone needs it, yours can wait," which in his gentle voice is a shove. I carry the comment like a small stone in my shoe. I step outside into the cold and press the garage remote in my pocket. The door clicks down like a stage curtain. The thud sounds louder than it should against the snow. For a second I watch the house through the window and let the glare of the chandelier smooth out the edges of my family. The picture someone just took will be posted before midnight with a laughing emoji and a caption that calls me the underachiever. The image they prefer of me, soft, small, grateful, settles back into place while I stand on the porch with breath fogging my mouth. I text Paige one word, "Understood." It is both surrender and a calibration. I find Olivia in the hallway where coats hang like trophies of temperature. For a moment we are alone, the muffled dinner sounds behind her like a tide. I speak low because this is the way I tried to save things once, softly, quietly. "Your changes didn't save money," I say, holding my voice steady. "I can show you the numbers. Fix it quietly before anyone gets hurt." She looks at me with a smile that doesn't reach her eyes, the same little smile she used the night she handed my dorm room ideas to Ethan Ward. "Don't embarrass yourself tonight," she says, her tone syrup slick. "Stay in your lane." "Olivia," I say, "this is not a lane, this is people's lives. The safety fix, it's delayed. Employees are being denied leave before surgeries. If you want help, I can walk you through the numbers, I can help you reverse it." I feel the old heat under my ribs, the ache of the past betrayal, the thing I promised never to let define my choices. She touches her earring as if it's an anchor and laughs lightly, the sound a closing door. "That's above me," she says, turning away. "We're fine, you worry too much for someone who teaches one class." She walks back into the dining room and begins a story about people who can't handle pressure, letting me be an object lesson. The private warning I hoped would stop this fades the moment she joins the laughter. I stand in the hallway with my hand pressed to the wall, listening to my own pulse. I draft a text to Grant Caldwell, 2 words. "We meet," and then delete it. The choice to warn her privately dies with the hallway light. The options narrow in that small space where we stood, keep pressing alone or step into the public light and make them listen. I ask the obvious questions: who denied it, who signed anything, and what form did they send? She tells me she followed every protocol, sent the medical note, and that someone in payroll replied that a new directive says they can't approve leaves that cause headcount gaps before year-end. I tell her exactly what I mean. Take the time, your child comes first, I'll fix this tonight. I'm not even sure how yet, but I mean it. She says, Camille, you don't have to, and I hear gratitude and fear in her voice. No, I say, because I can't imagine sitting with that and doing nothing. Make sure the hospital has the contact on file. I'll email you once it's done. We hang up and my hands are colder than the laundry room. I text Paige with the shorthand that means move everything into now, find Lauren Pierce in payroll, confirm denial, prepare reversal and back pay. Paige replies faster than I'd expected. 3 dots appear and then a quick rundown. Lauren's request flagged under new policy language, multiple denials in the last month, sign-offs routed through a finance lead who was following new guidance. She adds that this trend lines up with a memo she found last week about cost controls and that the tone of the memo put a thumb on managers to reduce absences to hit year-end numbers. The wording reads like it was written to protect bonus pools, not people. Paige sends me a screenshot of the phrasing used in several emails, words like constraint, absentee cost, coverage shortages, and I feel my stomach drop because I recognize the same blunt phrasing in the safety memo I keep folded in my notebook. The safety memo had the line upgrade deferred pending budget review, and the same calm corporate language masked the risk, where one side of the company talks about coverage and efficiency, another talks about delayed fixes and later installs. The two sets of language belong to the same machine. One that measures everything by short-term dollars and shrugs at the human ripple effects. I pull my leather notebook from under my chair to scribble 3 words on a sticky note: people, safety, money, and I underline people twice until the pen tears the paper. The pattern stops being a series of bad calls and starts to look like culture. It's not an accident. It's a way of doing business that puts year-end numbers above someone's child, above the right time to install a safety part, above the simple decency of covering a parent for surgery. I text Paige, we're done nudging, prep decisive steps. Her reply comes with a single firm on it. Back at the table, the surface of things keeps trying to be ordinary. Someone asks me what I teach and the question lands like a soft knife. The room expects a sweet answer: I teach business at the community college, and then it will move on. Olivia leans in and says loud enough, you should have heard how fast Grant answers my emails. The statement is casual, a way of reminding everyone who matters in the room. My phone shows a string of missed calls from Grant Caldwell. 3 missed, then a call that cut off, then an urgent text asking to meet the owner. His name flashes and I feel the small, cold knot of control you'd get when someone keeps knocking at a door you can open. I press my phone flat against my palm and feel the beat under the skin. The CEO stands to make a toast about leaner, smarter operations, and the room clinks glasses like a synchronized program. I can see Lauren in my mind filling out pre-op forms in a hospital, worrying about whether she'll have a job when she gets home. The contrast hits my throat like a gulp of bitter wine. I slide my spoon through my soup and watch the soup settle in concentric circles. I text Paige, pull the memo about the safety fix version with his signature. Her reply is immediate: found it, sending. She knows the lines I need. Dates, initials, who approved what. Paige sends me 3 clean files, a signed note delaying the safety upgrade with a date stamp, an expense list showing a luxury car lease and 2 retreats labeled under operations, and a short internal memo tightening absence approvals. My fingers trace the signature on the safety note and the letters look like his, calm, quick, unconcerned. For a second the room tilts, the floor under me feels harder. I tuck the papers into the leather notebook and feel their weight like stones filling a pocket. This is the ground I plan to stand on. The feeling of progress has its own risk. If I stand up tonight and drop these facts in front of the family, they'll say I'm performing a stunt. They'll blame timing, the holiday mood, the fact that I'm showing off. If I wait until morning, these decisions will have more time to hurt people. Lauren might go to surgery with the fear of losing her job. There's no second chance there. The battery icon on my phone blinks at me, 18%. The nearest outlet is behind the head table where men in suits are talking about bonuses, and my hand tightens on the edge of the table in a reflex I barely notice. I mark the page with the red ribbon and slide the notebook back under my chair where my fingers can find it in the dark. The soup is nearly gone and dessert plates clink like tiny gongs. I tell Paige, draft a step-down letter for Grant. Prepare a demotion plan for Olivia with repayment terms. Print binders, bring a projector if the TV goes rogue. Her answer is sharp and efficient and reassuring. Will do. Also, Lauren's email thread compiled in front of the binder. I breathe, slow and deliberate, the way I do before I teach. The plan is set, the proof is real, and a quiet part of me smiles because the work is the kind of precise thing I know how to do. Still, a new vulnerability settles in. I'm about to break the family picture, and there's no guarantee they'll see the facts instead of the spectacle. The living room has been a stage for the story they've told about me for years. Once you step onto someone's stage, you get judged by the rules of their play. If they call it theater, they'll make me out to be dramatic. If I manage the facts and the room listens, I might save people. It's a narrow edge, and my shoes are thin. I feel the cold of the garage cot in my bones and the thinness of the blanket under my fingers, and I decide once more that some things are worth the risk. The clock in my watch says one course left before the moment I picked. I tuck that time under my breath and prepare to stand. The safety fix memo is worse because it ties a date to a choice. Someone wrote deferred pending budget review and signed it without a footnote. That language turned a patchable problem into a slow-burning risk. A safety part left uninstalled isn't just a line item. It's a future hospital trip, a broken hand, a worse outcome. I picture a technician leaning against a machine thinking it's fine because the paperwork says deferred. That imagination is part of how I make decisions. I can't look at a chart without imagining the person behind it. Then there's the odd laundry list of operations expenses that look out of place: a leased car with premium plates, 2 retreats in hotels with team-building invoices, dinners labeled as client relations that seem to be family and friends. I add them up in my head quietly, and the total could have kept 10 people on paid leave for a year. I let the number sit there, an ugly little truth. I flip to the signed page and hold the pen where his signature is. The loop of his D is casual, practiced. Seeing it beside the memo hardens a fact into an obligation. Someone approved this and someone else enabled it. I don't like drama, but I like truth, and truth likes clear lines. So I take a breath and let the quiet do what shouting can't. Numbers are neutral until you attach a human to them. I put Lauren's message, the safety memo, and the expense list in order: people, risk, cost, and feel a dangerous calm. The room behind me hums with Christmas chatter as if it has nothing to do with what's on my desk, and that illusion is what I came to break. Burning a bridge isn't a metaphor for me tonight. It's an actual small choice that will change everything. Mom comes over to top up the wine and says sweetly, "Help me with this?" She thinks I'm being coy, dramatizing perhaps, and I know how they'll tell the story later. That I interrupted a lovely dinner. I look at her and shake my head once, a gentle refusal. "Not this time," I say. The phrase lands with a tiny crack like a dropped ornament. Mom's face goes soft, then guarded, and she steps back. For a flash, I see the manila envelope with a dorm notebook inside, the night Ethan Ward stepped into my life. I let the feeling pass. Dad gives me one of those looks that means I've crossed an invisible boundary, an expression between concern and that old, weary disappointment. He tries to smooth it over with a joke, but I don't laugh. Olivia lifts her glass, shining like everything she's always wanted to be, and for the first time, I don't look away from her. I decide not to take her aside quietly anymore. I used to hope private appeals would be enough. They weren't. Tonight, burning that private passage is a method, not spite. I step out of the family photograph and leave a space that shows I'm no longer playing a supporting role. To make the night count, I have to commit publicly, and that requires time and an administrative rhythm. I send a few quick messages to Paige, to security, to the board chair. My fingers are steady. Board pre-meeting 9 o'clock m. Confirm attendance, I type. Lock his badge access at 8 o'clock m. HR restore Lauren's leave now. Safety purchase order approved. Install today. The words feel ordinary on the screen, but each one is a small machine that will shift people around. Paige replies in one-line blasts, clear, capable, on it, printing binders, projector ready, HR alerted, security on standby. Reading her messages is like watching a row of dominoes settle into place. I set the 2 tiny alarms on my phone that will tell me where to be and when. One at 7 o'clock am to make the morning call, one at 8:55 am to walk into the boardroom with everything laid out. I also send instructions to the board chair, simple, direct, and she answers with a thumbs up. It's funny how sensible gestures feel huge in the middle of a family dining room. I tuck my notebook under my knee and let the red ribbon press into my skin. It grounds me. Then there's the small practical stuff. Paige will bring hard copies because the living room Wi-Fi is a risk. The projector is in her bag because TV ports sometimes fail. An extra portable hotspot will ensure we can get the files up on a screen. Binders will have Lauren's case on top so no one can say they didn't know. I text security to stand by but to be discreet. I don't want a scene of guards at the front door unless I have to. I want facts to speak so forcefully that the option for spin disappears. I picture the CEO at his desk tomorrow morning, used to being center stage, used to crafting narratives that sound noble to the people who haven't seen the invoices. And I think about the way someone scrambles when the lights go on and the script they've been practicing falls open. He sends one more text now, a last-minute plea to meet the owner tonight. The message pops up on my screen like a comedic attempt at fate. He doesn't know what owner means. He thinks owner is a soft rumor. He doesn't know he's already on a clock I started. I smile, a small exhale that tastes like cold air. My opening line is waiting in my head. My name is Camille Archer and I own the company you've been flattering tonight. It is both the simplest and the sharpest sentence I could choose. I plan it the way a teacher plans a lesson, clear, objective, step by step. Step 1, make it public. Step 2, put proof on a screen. Step 3, name the harm and give options. Step 4, offer repair. Nothing about it is vengeful in tone, it's corrective. I tell Paige to draft a neutral step-down letter for Grant and a fair, strict improvement plan for Olivia with repayment terms for the charges she treated as personal. No theatrics, I add, just facts and options. Paige types back, understood, clean and direct. I slide the leather notebook onto the cushion of my chair and run my thumb over the red ribbon until the paper fibers buzz under my skin. I feel the chipped mug's shape in my mind, a private relic that will sit beside the binder tomorrow as a reminder of where the night began. The garage remote in my pocket is warm from where my hand rested on it. The click will be small, but its meaning will be huge. I'm not a woman who loves confrontation, but I'm not someone who ignores harm when I can stop it. The pivot to action is both terrifying and inevitable. I swallow, taste the last of my soup and stand. So I flip. It's less theatrical than I'd rehearsed at 3 in the morning with a hot mug in my hands. It's more precise. I clear my throat once and the clink of crystal goes quiet. I stand and I let the click of the garage remote in my pocket remind me that small things can be tools. I don't scream. I don't threaten. I say a simple line I've said to myself so many times it feels like a vow. My name is Camille Archer and I own the company you've been flattering tonight. The sentence drops like a stone. The television, already humming with family photos, is the nearest blank canvas. I tap my phone, cast the company ID to the screen, and my name, my title, and the corporate black and white fills the living room like a lamp turned on. Mom makes a sound that is part surprise, part prayer. Dad's mouth opens and closes like a fish in air. Olivia's face goes the color of spun sugar and she reaches out as if she can steady me with a touch. Grant's smile thins in an instant. He looks 12 and caught. I let the quiet hold for one measured beat because the room needs to reorient. Then I lay out what matters, a delayed safety fix signed with his hand, expense items labeled as operations that paid for a car and retreats. A pattern of denied leaves that matches the new memo I saw. I don't spin things into drama. I name the harm plainly. Someone's child is scheduled for surgery tomorrow and was denied time off. A safety part got pushed back to save money now. People's jobs were treated like numbers. I point to dates and signatures as they appear on the TV. The living room becomes a boardroom and faces that once angled light on my sister now look at the facts. There's no way back after that breath. I send a quick string of messages that feel like pulling levers. To the board chair I write, 9 o'clock a.m. emergency meeting, binders provided, bring compliance and HR. To security. Prepare to restrict badge access at 8 o'clock a.m. for the Chief Executive Officer. To HR I type, approve Lauren Pierce's leave and back pay now, open a confidential hotline for those affected. Page replies faster than my heartbeat. On it, printing, hotspot, and binder coming. I push a button that schedules notice to be sent to the board. It goes out and the room watches the little circle of typing under my name like a small piece of theater. I accept that I'm choosing a path that will cost me personal distance with some of them. Mom will tell her friends I made a scene. Dad will ask if I had to do it on Christmas Eve. Olivia will call me a traitor. They might tell the story that fits them best, that I performed for attention. I can already see those future versions of the evening and they sting in the way old hurts do, but I'm holding a different picture too. Lauren in a hospital, not a spreadsheet. A child getting care without a parent's fear that they'll come back to unemployment. I think of the chipped mug on the garage shelf, the thin blanket on the cot, and the times I let things slide so people could feel comfortable, and I decide I won't let comfort be a cover for cruelty. I tell myself that cost is the price of correcting an energy that treats people as disposable. I'll lose private dinners, quiet phone calls, and maybe the small rituals that used to soothe the old family edges. Mom might not speak to me for a month. She might never forgive me for doing it publicly. Olivia might retreat into silence or lash out. They might say I turned a private moment into a public shame. I sit with that. I count it like a debt I knew I'd owe. There's also a cold little joy, call it relief, that I won't carry that secret alone anymore. Relief that the truth is out where it can be fixed. So I make the terms clear because mercy without structure is a trap. To Grant, I offer a simple, clean choice. Step down now with a neutral exit line and dignity for the announcement, or contest it and be removed. For Olivia, I offer 2 doors. Accept a demotion with tight oversight, a repayment plan for personal charges booked as company expense, and coaching to rebuild trust, or resign. I say these things without heat because I'm not here to humiliate. I'm here to stop the harm and to give people options that protect the company and the people who work in it. I place Lauren's case at the top of a binder I plan to hand the board in the morning. I sign the approval for the safety part with my name and the word immediate underlined. I tell Paige to prepare the binders so every board member will see the paper trail the moment they walk in. Then I say the goal in a voice that has no room for casual cruelty. This isn't about spectacle, I tell them. It's about people. We fix what's broken now. We make sure the jobs and lives that were treated like numbers get a fair shake. There will be consequences, yes, but also paths back for those who want to do the work. I point out that anyone who refuses the options can expect to be moved out so the company can heal. The sentence lands heavier than a toast. The room is full of relatives and workmates who thought the two were different worlds. Tonight they've collided in the cleanest possible way. I restate what I'm after because the story I want them to remember is not power for power's sake. The real power is choosing justice over cruelty and changing rules so a working parent doesn't have to choose between a hospital waiting room and a paycheck. I'm offering Olivia an opportunity to rebuild under a plan that has clear steps, measurable goals, and no special favors. I'm offering the CEO a path offstage that keeps the company steady while it stops hurting people. I'm restoring Lauren's paid leave and funding the safety upgrade now, not later. I tell Mom and Dad quietly that next Christmas I will host. There will be warm rooms for everyone. No one will sleep in a garage. I mean it the way you mean to plant a tree you'll enjoy for decades. After I speak, I set my leather notebook on the table and let the red ribbon hang like a seam. The chipped mug sits in my hand, warm from where my fingers curled around it in the garage, and I feel both the ache of old wounds and the hard satisfaction of a task done right. The room exhales as if a held breath finally leaves. Some faces are closed, some are surprised into softness. The important thing is that the facts are out where they can be acted on, not whispered about. The quiet plan I've lived with for years, build, hold, correct discreetly, shifts into a different kind of correction. Public, clear, and aimed at protecting people who can't protect themselves. I'm ready to pay the personal bill that comes with it because the only alternative is to let them go on believing I belong in a garage and to let harm keep happening in the name of efficiency. I won't let that be my family's legacy. Grant tells another story about the operations budget covering a car lease, a point he spins as necessary for client travel, and Dad asks about it with curiosity. The conversation drifts into numbers and reputations, phrases that in this house become trophies. I answer softly, "That's an expense we'll review," and they all hear correction but translate it as criticism of one of their own. Someone at the table clinks a glass and the sound tries to polish the moment. I watch faces tilt, some to friend, some to family, to see how they'll place their loyalties. A cousin leans over and says, "You sure you're not being dramatic, Cam?" with a half smile that expects confetti and not consequences. Mom touches my hand with a quick, almost guilty motion and whispers, "Don't make a scene." Her whisper is soft, but it's the old script trying to reassert itself. Family first, outside airs later. For a beat I taste the old fear of being the one who broke the spell. Then I notice Grant's smile stretch thin like a rubber band about to snap. He starts a new joke about tough choices and necessary cuts that lands like small gravel in the room. I keep my voice low and clear. "People make those choices," I say, "but people suffer for them." It's not an argument over value. It's a naming of cost. Outside, my garage cot and the photo someone took feel like Taos and not tarnished. They're the image they prefer of me. I feel the weight of that preferred image like a stone in my pocket. The counterpunches are predictable and coordinated, make me look petty, call me dramatic, remind people that we care about appearances. The harder they press, the more I know I'm on the right edge. When I step out for air, the family thread on my phone has already lit up. Someone posted that picture of the cot with a laughing emoji and a string of comments from relatives who think this is the whole story. I thumb through them with a slow, careful detachment as if I'm scanning a file. My sedan in the driveway is now boxed in by two SUVs, their polished sides gleaming like mirrors that reflect an image of people who never learned to be unseen. The cold presses against my cheeks and the garage heater rattles and dies for a moment, leaving a silence I can almost hear. When it kicks back on, it wheezes like something that needs care. A neighbor's dog starts barking at a snowbank and the noise cuts through the night like a small alarm. I laugh once, too short, and it catches in my throat. I text Paige, extra charger, gloves. Hotspot if needed. Her reply is efficient and immediate. I take a breath and feel the old ways of graceful retreat tug at me, go inside, apologize later, accept the narrative. But the driveway and the boxed-in sedan feel like a metaphor. They're telling me visually what they always have: you don't fit here. The last safe space had been the idea that whatever I did, the family would still see me the same. That idea cracks when they post pictures of me like I'm a sideshow. The heater falters again and a small bead of sweat clings to my upper lip where the cold met warmth. I move my hand over the garage remote in my pocket and feel its small plastic weight. I think about the chipped mug again and how ordinary objects hold their own histories. I answer a cousin's text with a single word, "soon," and then delete it. The social pressure is heavy because it's quiet. It's the kind of pressure that doesn't need to shout to be dangerous. It shapes the stories people will tell about me tomorrow and for years to come. That matters. But I remember Lauren's message and the safety memo and know that I can't let their narrative become the one that matters most. Back inside, someone knocks over a wine glass and the red spreads across the white tablecloth like a small, scandalous map. The stain blooms and everyone freezes, the sound of silence like an audible thing. Napkins flap uselessly and one of the ants makes a clucking sound as if this is the worst possible interruption. The spread of red on white feels oddly like a signal I can use. It's visible, it's embarrassing, and it makes no one comfortable. I don't move. I let the sight settle in the room like a question. The TV screen, polished with family slides, sits dark for a moment, the company ID still hung like an announcement that won't be erased. My phone vibrates with pages text, binder ready, projector charged, extra copies printed. The battery icon on my phone flashes a low percentage and I think about outlets and the table where executives are talking. My hand moves to my pocket and I feel the leather notebook there, warm from where it's been resting against me. The room's chatter grows around the stain as people try to fill the silence with safe topics, whether travel plans, a horror story about a copier at work. But those topics are thin and brittle tonight. They don't hold. There are small, practical constraints tightening like a band. Place cards mark where people sit. The table layout keeps me at the end. The TV is 2 steps from where I will stand. The CEO, undeterred and defensive, begins a toast about tough choices in January and about rewarding leadership who made the hard calls. My sister prompts him with a sugar-sweet question that makes everyone laugh, but the laughter has a nervous edge. My phone dims from 40% to 32% in the space of a few minutes, and it's a reminder that time and power both run on a battery. I double-tap the display on my phone and cue the ID slide so it will be ready if the living room connection dies. I test brightness and the colors pop, a strip of white against the family photos. My thumb finds the red ribbon in my notebook and smooths it against the leather until the fibers buzz under my skin. I think about how even small things can be constraints. A TV port that fails, a family member who will cry in the wrong moment, a cousin's phone that will go viral. I map those small possibilities in my head like a chess player counting moves ahead. People keep talking, but the room feels smaller. Every toast, every joke, and every photographed moment squeezes the space where I can reveal more. The constraints are not just material now, they're social. The more they try to restore the old scene with jokes and little insults, the less likely anyone will accept a new version of me. That pressure could make a person fold. But it sharpens me instead. It narrows the margin for error and forces me to be clean, precise, and unassailable. I arrange my breath, tuck my phone flat against my palm, and wait for the right slice of silence to take the next step. I stand up and walk slowly through the dining room so the motion looks ordinary and because movement gives me a few seconds to line my words. I catch Grant mid-sentence praising tough choices and I let the sentence hang. I don't accuse him of being cruel, I point at the paper trail. I show the printout that connects denied leave requests to the memo that tightened rules. I lay out the safety note next to the expense list. The living room shifts. People turn their plates toward the objects like moths to a lamp. I don't do dramatic flourishes, no theatrics, no raised voice, just the clean facts arranged like tiles. The connection between policy and people hurt is simple and ugly. Someone calls it an honest mistake and another voice says this is the price of running a business. I counter with Lauren's text and with the simple human cost of delayed care. I say, this isn't about one decision or one person, it's a habit. It's how you've taught people to measure worth. There's a dull sound when the words sink in, not horror, just the low scrape of a story changing. Mom looks at me the way she does when she's trying to read a new recipe that seems complicated at first. Dad folds his hands and stares at the tablecloth as if it's a map he can't read. Olivia's smile fades and her eyes narrow, searching for a fault line she can step back across. Grant's lips press together, and for the first time tonight I think he sees the size of what he signed off on. His face is not the only one that will have to change. The whole room looks slightly rearranged, as if someone shifted the furniture a few inches and now nothing sits quite like it did before. Snow outside thickens and presses against the windows, muffling the world. Inside, the family photos glow on the screen and seem faintly unreal, like a set of props. My phone buzzes with a string of messages confirming pre-meeting attendance, and the practical hum of logistics punctures the emotional fog. There's no turning the clock back to nice holiday dinner. The board wants answers. So do the people who trust me to use whatever power I hold to protect them. I feel a tightening in my chest that isn't fear, it's obligation. It's the thing that has been building for years, the refusal to let another person be hurt because someone wanted a number to look better. When the board's assistant moves the pre-meeting to 7:30 a.m., the message pops onto my lock screen like a countdown. The roads will be worse at dawn, the night will be shorter. There is no tomorrow that offers comfort. There's only now and the early morning. Grant lifts his glass and says, with the kind of smoothness practiced at 1,000 dinners, "Here's to hard choices and rewards that follow." The words fall like a nail into wood where, for some, the wood is a table and for others, it's a coffin. I look at him, fully aware that he's offering a narrative that will be easy for people to repeat. If I let him have that last word tonight, the story will belong to him. The last safe option, quiet correction, private persuasion, has evaporated. Olivia's earlier brush-off in the hallway proved private warnings won't move her when the stakes look like success. The family's laughter over the garage cot told me this room still prefers the smaller story of who I am. That old shelter was gone as soon as Grant texted me like he was knocking on a locked gate and asking to be let in. The minute I cast my ID to the television and put the memo on the table, I closed the door on the old ways. There's no going back to the person who accepted the garage cot and the jokes. Not tonight. I feel a flinch of regret that the only audience I have for this moment are the people who make my childhood memories and the people who stand to lose from being exposed. There will be personal fallout. Mom may not speak to me for a while, Dad will worry he pushed too far when he kept silence, Olivia may retreat farther than I can mend. Those are the costs. I name them in my head like a ledger and accept them because the alternative, letting this keep happening, would be worse. I'm not doing this to hurt them, I'm doing this because someone like Lauren can't be collateral in a fiscal plan. So I do the thing that feels both necessary and risky. I pick up the remote and cast the image again, this time with the memo open to the page with his signature, the expense list, and Lauren's text thread on top. The television fills with the images and the living room becomes, in the cleanest way possible, a place of work. I hear several people inhale, the sound makes the air sharp. I say, plainly, I'm asking for choices tomorrow morning. Grant, step down now with a neutral statement or be removed. Olivia, accept a demotion with a tight improvement plan and repay the expenses you put on the company tab, or resign. We will fund the safety upgrade today and restore paid leave where it was wrongfully denied. We'll open a safe channel for employees to report harm. Decisions happen at 7:30 a.m. in the boardroom. My voice is steady because there isn't time for consequences that require drama, they need clarity. I lay out the reasons and the options without glee. I offer the CEO a clean exit because I want the company steady and the messaging tidy. I offer my sister a path back because people can redeem themselves if they do the work. I undercut revenge by giving structure, clear steps, timelines, and measurable outcomes. The plan is high risk because it exposes family and company simultaneously, but it's designed to minimize harm to the people who don't have a vote in this. I tell them, finally, that the goal isn't to humiliate anyone, it's to stop a pattern that injured a parent and delayed a safety fix. Then I add the one personal line I let rest on the table like a promise: tomorrow, we fix this. Tonight, you know who I am. The room sits with that, a silence full of weight, and I realize that whatever comes next, the choice has been made. The guests murmur agreement. Conversations try to resume. Someone calls for dessert as if sugar can stitch the silence. The facts I put up, dates, signatures, the name of Lauren's child in a text thread, slip back into the realm of what she said. The TV's black rectangle seems to swallow them. In that blink, the work I've done around evidence feels fragile, like a tent that might fail in wind. I watch as the living room rearranges itself into a story that prefers comedy to consequence. A cousin tuts and asks if music will help, and an aunt pats mom's arm with theatrical concern. The people I love fold into old grooves, and I can feel my control slide into the hands of the familiar. The collapse of that moment cracks something deeper than embarrassment. It opens a door to a memory I've kept shut for years, one of the reasons I learned to be silent and strong. I'm in a cramped dorm room years ago. Winter in the air and cheap coffee on the desk. My spiral-bound notebook is spread open on my bed. I sketch diagrams, flow charts drawn with a shaky pencil, writing potential customer segments in the margins. Olivia leans over the bed, her lipstick smudged from a party, and Ethan Ward lounges on the floor with his elbows on his knees, listening with that eager, hungry look he always had. I trusted them. I told them about the idea because I wanted my sister to know I'd built something that wasn't just a note. I wanted people close to me to understand the late nights and the bills. A week later, I'm at a campus coffee shop and I see Ethan on stage at a pitch night with my outline dressed up, polished, a new name slapped on my sketch. The room applauds. I confront Olivia in the laundry room and she says, "We are family." The phrase is meant to close a wound, but it becomes a bandage that sticks to skin and rips hair out when you pull it off. That memory is small and sharp, and it feeds the rest of the night with proof of why I chose to build quietly. I learned then that soft conversations could be turned into theft if the other person wanted credit more than loyalty. The memory finishes and I step back into the present, into the cold that always lives in the garage where they put me. I close the door and the sound of it is a small, private thunder that drowns out the muffled laughter coming from inside. The air in the garage is raw and clean, my breath fogs in little puffs that hang like brief ghosts. I sit down on the cot and for a moment I let the thin blanket gather around my knees like an old promise. My hands begin to shake in a way that isn't just from the cold. I pull the chipped mug from the shelf and cradle it as if holding a small, fragile lamp. The ceramic bump at the lip fits into my palm the way the memory of being overlooked fits into me. 2 tears slide down my face, one for the insult and one for the years of keeping my mouth shut. I think about Lauren in a hospital bed, about a child whose fingers might curl around a parent's hand tomorrow in the operating room while the parent wonders if they'll have a job afterward. I think about the safety part that sits on a purchase list somewhere, delayed. The cold in the garage seems to make those faces clearer, more immediate. I text Paige with hands that don't stop trembling. If the cast dies were on portable projector, binders in the morning, hotspot, extra battery. The message is practical because in this moment practicality is all that keeps panic from spreading. I charge my phone with the portable battery from my tote. The percent ticks up slowly and the noise of the charger clicking into life sounds like a small victory. For a while I'm alone with my breath and the cardboard boxes that smell like old Christmases. Memories crowd the edges of the room, ornaments in tissue, the box of cards from years ago, Dad's old golf clubs leaning like sentries. I fold the thin blanket over my knees again, lay the chipped mug on the crate beside me, and let the quiet settle until it feels solid enough to stand on. I think about calling Mom and saying, "I'm sorry for making this hard." But I'd be apologizing for stopping harm, and that feels like a lie I won't tell. Instead, I whisper to myself small, private vows: we protect people. We fix what we can, we don't let them shape the story alone. Then headlights sweep across the garage door and the sound of boots crunching through wet snow follows. Paige arrives like a small hurricane of competence, canvas bag slung over her shoulder, cheeks pink from the cold, breath steaming in a bright, determined cloud. She drops the bag and opens it like a field medic. Projector, portable hotspot, spare charger, a stack of binders with neat tabs, printed copies of the memos with margins that have notes in my handwriting. She doesn't look surprised by the tears. She simply hands me a paper cup of hot coffee and a small smile that says, "We do the work." Her gloves are damp and her hair is pinned back. "Got everything," she says. The words are ordinary, but they steady me more than anything else. A neighbor, hearing the shuffle, pokes his head out with an extension cord and a worried smile. "Heard noise, need an outlet?" he asks, as if he's offering a bowl of salt to calm some ancient evil. I say yes, and he hands me the cord like a peace offering. In the garage, under a strip of bare bulb, Paige lays out the binders and flips on the portable projector. The hotspot hums, bright and alive. The projector throws a small, steady rectangle of light against a cardboard folding table. I breathe and the breath feels like the first one after a run. An email pings on my phone from the board chair, confirmed, 7:30 a.m. "We'll be there, bring the binders." It's short, enough to anchor the morning. Paige puts a hand on my shoulder and doesn't say much. Her presence is a fact, a log beneath a fire. She hands me a glove and a printed copy of Lauren's messages with a note. "Front of binder, names redacted until HR call." I nod, fold the thin blanket around me tighter, and take a moment to feel the rawness wash slow. There is still fear, sure, there's the hurt I know I'll carry for months, but the one possibility that gives me room to breathe opens like a small, honest door. We can still do this. We can still bring the facts to morning light and with them protect people who didn't have a voice. I don't go back to the dining room that night. I stay in the garage prepping like a surgeon with a clean field. I check the projector, test the binders, sync my phone to Paige's hotspot. I make a list of the names I need to say in the morning and write them carefully on a sticky note. Lauren, safety, expenses. I fold the note and tuck it into the leather notebook. The chipped mug sits beside it like a reminder of where I started and why I started. Outside, snow softens the world and the house holds its breath. Inside, with the hum of the hotspot and the steady presence of Paige, the one possibility I cling to becomes stronger. Tomorrow, we show up with facts and options, and we make sure the people who were treated as numbers are treated as people. I said calmly, "We start on time, phones face down, we're here to correct harm and secure the future." I let the words sit in the room until the little hum of jackets and rustling papers faded. I handed out the printed binders, 12 copies, one for every person who needed it, and made sure everyone had a folder that began with the human story, Lauren Pierce's messages and the request for leave. The first page said simply, "People before numbers." My voice didn't rise, it simply set the rule. I wanted this to be orderly. If we're going to right wrongs, we can't let chaos provide cover for excuses. That was my first lesson. Make the room expect clarity and it will demand it. When I moved into the facts, I kept my pace slow and steady. I showed the page with Lauren's thread and read the short lines aloud. Denied leave, denied again, new directive. Then I turned the pages that tied that directive to the memo that said defer safety upgrade pending budget review, and I pointed at the date and the signature. I laid out a simple causal line, a policy tightened to protect year-end numbers, leaving frontline workers exposed, a safety upgrade delayed because someone wanted to save money now. Expenses labeled as operations that turned into a leased car and retreats. I didn't use big words. I said plainly, a parent was denied time off before a child's surgery. A safety part was deferred, increasing risk. Company funds covered personal comforts. These are connected. I spoke to the people in the room one by one and watched the paper trail do the work my voice couldn't. The CEO tried to interrupt at first, but I slid a page with his initials across the table and let the ink speak. When we reached the consequences for the CEO, I kept it straightforward. I placed a typed letter on the table that offered two things: a clean, neutral exit he could sign and agree to for the sake of the company, or the board would move immediately to remove him. I said, sign now for an orderly transition and we'll coordinate a single announcement. Refuse and we'll proceed to remove you for cause. The board chair leaned forward and said quietly, "We support the owner in these steps." I watched the chief executive officer try to bargain optics, timing, impact on clients, but the binders had the receipts and the human examples that made bargaining sound thin. He looked at each board member as if asking for support and didn't find it. There was no public shaming in the language I used. It was purely procedural. Responsibilities end now. HR will manage communications. Security will handle access. He signed. His hand shook a little as he did it, and the pen made a hard sound on the paper. When he pushed the document back, his smile was gone. I told him to take the time he needed to collect his things and to leave on the terms he chose. He gathered his jacket without meeting my eye. Turning to Olivia was the part I had rehearsed but never wanted to relish. I put the binder in front of her and said, "You have two options." I laid them out clearly. A demotion into a role with strict oversight, mandatory coaching, and a repayment plan for personal charges posted as company expenses, or resignation effective immediately. There would be no softening of the terms and no private favors. I said, "If you choose the plan, HR will set measurable goals and we will review performance quarterly. Any lapse will end the plan." Her hands trembled as she thumbed the edge of the paperwork. She looked at me with an expression that was equal parts hurt and something close to recognition. For a long beat, she didn't speak. I could have filled the silence with an apology that would undo nothing. Instead, I kept my face steady and the offer real. She asked, finally, "Why are you giving me a choice?" Her voice was small but held in it the same old bravado that had once told me we were family. I said, softly but without apology, "Because people deserve a path when they stop causing harm. You get to choose whether you want to do the work of fixing what you broke." That answer stripped the drama, it left responsibility. After a long breath, she said, "I'll take the plan." It wasn't a proud little speech. It was practical, bowed under real consequences, and for the first time in years I heard her say the work aloud. I told her to meet HR at 10, that repayment started next paycheck, and that the plan included mentorship and oversight. She placed her head in her hands for a moment and then met my eyes. We didn't hug. We didn't need to. The room felt processed, like a wound set and bandaged, not healed. The practical items followed. I signed the purchase order that allowed the safety part to be installed immediately. HR confirmed Lauren's leave with back pay and set up a confidential channel for anyone else to report harm. We scheduled listening sessions for frontline staff and ordered an audit of the operations category. I closed my binder and felt the chipped mug's cool edge under my fingers where it rested beside my notes. The room exhaled like a body relieved of a strain. People would have to live with what they'd learned and act on it. That was the point. I walked out of the glass room with my back straight and a small, private certainty that the morning had been used for what it was supposed to be. Correction, not revenge. Repair, not spectacle. I set up a hardship fund for emergencies, money that managers could tap quickly without months of forms. I put a requirement on expense reports that operations needed a note and a manager sign-off that explained the benefit to the company in a sentence anyone could understand. No more vague labels that hide what a purchase really was. I ordered manager training focused on treating requests fairly and spotting unconscious bias. Those were the surface fixes. Deeper than that, I told the board we would do quarterly listening sessions where frontline staff could talk to the company's leaders without layers of filters, real conversations, not surveys buried in a newsletter. We'd publish a short summary after each session so everyone could see patterns, not secrets. I also asked for an audit of any expenses listed under operations for the last 2 years. Not to shame individuals for old mistakes, but to clear the books and set a public standard of transparency. We would publish a simple summary, no complicated accounting, just plain language about what had been spent and why. The point was to show people how decisions had been made and make it less likely those decisions would be hidden again. I asked legal to write a clean policy update in language everyone could understand and HR to roll it out with sessions where managers would practice real conversations about leave, safety, and boundaries. I insisted on measurable checkpoints, an independent reviewer at 3 months, a full report at 6, and a public note in the employee newsletter that outlined steps taken. Those were the rules I wanted the company to live by. When it came time to close the loop, I kept it short and factual. I wrote a short internal note for distribution. We correct mistakes, we protect people. Effective immediately, we are restoring leave, funding safety, and changing policies to prevent recurrence. I asked the communications team to keep the tone sober and the facts front and center. The chief executive officer left with a neutral statement prepared by HR. There was no spectacle, just a clear handover and an announcement that would let the company move forward without a chaotic narrative. Olivia stayed, and there was tension between us, but it was focused on work now instead of old gossip. She didn't hug me, but she stayed and accepted the plan, which was a small, practical victory. I packed my leather notebook away and left the chipped mug on the conference table like a small, private marker. The snow outside had thickened into a soft silence that made the city look slower and somehow kinder. My breath didn't fog in the boardroom, but when I stepped outside it did, a little cloud I watched drift away. I felt both tired and steady. The important thing was that the changes I announced would be measurable and, more importantly, reachable. They were things that could protect people tomorrow, not promises filtered through hope. Before I left, the board chair squeezed my shoulder and said, "You did what had to be done." It was the simplest acknowledgement, and it felt enough for then. Phones began to vibrate as people processed the morning. My own phone lit with messages from Mom and Dad. Mom's text was long and clipped, full of family first and an undercurrent of why now. Dad's note was shorter, was there no other time, and a sentence that smelled of worry. "Are you sure this was the right way?" I read them both twice. My sister's message was concise, "I'll do the work." A cousin sent a muted apology emoji and a private note that said, "We didn't know." "I'm sorry." I let most of the messages sit unread for a while because the urge to explain would open a door I didn't want to reopen. Later in the day, I answered a few times and with precision. I texted Mom and Dad that I understood their feelings and that the goal had been to stop harm, not to hurt anyone. I kept my tone steady. When family texts piled up with questions and old jokes, I chose one reply and left it as the anchor. I wrote in the family thread, "Next Christmas I'll host. There will be warm rooms for everyone." It was both a promise and a boundary. It told them it wasn't personal theater and that I still wanted family. I muted the thread after sending it. That single message felt like closing the door gently on the argument they wanted to have and opening the door to a future where we could be together without someone sleeping on a cot in a garage. I didn't respond to every note. I held space for them to react and figure out how to tell the story they would carry forward. The very next emails I sent were to people who mattered more than the family chorus, Lauren and HR. I wrote Lauren directly, "Your leave is approved. Full pay for the period in question. Focus on your child." Her reply came back with a photo of tiny fingers curled around a finger, 3 words across the image, "Thank you." "Thank you?" I sat there looking at it and felt the relief like a hand unclasping from around my throat. HR confirmed in writing that similar denials had been reversed where there was documentation and that they'd opened the confidential channel that day. I also asked for the names of people affected so I could reach out personally. A few HR replies trickled in, short, grateful messages from staff who said they didn't know how to raise these things without being punished. I wrote notes to each of them, signed simply, Camille. I went back to my class that week because I hadn't wanted to lose the thing that kept me honest. Standing in front of my students felt like standing on a familiar stage after a long, messy episode. I told them, without details, that power means nothing if it doesn't help people who can't help themselves. One student lingered afterward and said, "I didn't think leaders like that existed." I said, "Then be that kind of leader." It wasn't a speech so much as a charge. I sent Lauren a gift card for meals while her child was in the hospital, a small practical thing she hadn't asked for but needed. I wrote a short note to the team in Northline's accounting department, no drama, just facts. Leave restored, safety upgrade funded, and a request for anyone who had a similar experience to call HR and expect confidentiality. I kept checking in on the audit and on the listening sessions. The first session was raw. People spoke about fear, about managers who'd unfriended them after days off, about being told that surgeries were inconvenient. I took notes, not to score them but to find patterns. We adjusted policies quickly where we could and asked for suggestions on what else would help. The message I repeated to the company was simple and stubborn: people, not numbers. It sounds like a slogan, but I wanted it to be a practice. If a manager saw a request and thought only about a number on a sheet, they had training and a talking script to guide a different response. If a worker was afraid to speak up, HR had a live channel to hear them. If an expense looked like it might be personal, someone would ask a simple question: why and who benefits? In the weeks that followed, the news inside the company changed from gossip to work. We posted a simple summary of expenses that had been questionable and what we'd done to ensure transparency. We updated the employee handbook in plain language and held small group meetings where managers had to role-play say-no conversations without resorting to the old shortcuts. People sent me messages, some hesitant, some deeply grateful, about the safety part being ordered and about their leave being restored. Those notes mattered more than any headline. They were the proof that the changes weren't just paper but practice. At home, things were quieter and more complicated. Mom called once and we had a small, honest conversation where I explained that I couldn't look the other way when people got hurt. Dad and I had a longer talk about expectations and pride and about how sometimes doing the right thing looks terrible until it doesn't. Olivia and I spoke about work matters first, then about how we would try to be better siblings in different, smaller ways. It wasn't neat, but it was real. I left my chipped mug on a shelf where I could see it every morning. It reminded me of the night I chose to make myself visible, not for glory but for the people who needed me to be. The work after that night was steady and slow, and it felt like the sort of power I'd actually wanted all along. The power to correct harm and make sure no one else had to sleep in a garage to be part of their own family. There were nights I lay awake thinking of small things I would miss. A thin voice on the line from Dad asking if I was eating, Mom's quick, tender prayers when she thought no one was listening. There were days when a cousin's apology landed like a postage stamp, useful but flat, and days when silence replaced a call I used to expect. I booked a counselor because winning doesn't fix everything, it just moves pieces around. Sitting in that chair, I let a calmer person point at what pride and anger had done to my chest and teach me how to feel the pain without letting it turn into something I had to prove. I wrote a letter to myself about the girl who slept on a cot and promised to protect people without needing applause. I deleted a draft of a long message to Olivia that would have tried to stitch everything up in one paragraph. Some things can't be fixed in a single, neat sentence. I counted the costs like currency: private dinners lost, awkward brunches, the odd look from someone who once hugged me with ease. I counted also what I'd gained: clear air where gossip used to live, policies that would protect a mother who needed time, a safety part that would no longer be deferred, a small fund for emergencies. Those are not the sorts of things you put on a list for applause, but they were the real measure. I accepted the trade-off because I could look at Lauren's message and imagine her child's hand held without the parent's fear of being fired. That image outweighed the ache of being talked about over cider. I learned to hold both grief and relief at once. I called Dad and listened while he asked difficult questions, not to punish me but to understand. Mom and I had a long, blunt talk where she told me she felt embarrassed and scared. I told her I understood and didn't ask her for forgiveness on the spot. Olivia and I did real work that started messy and honest. It won't be fixed overnight, but she showed up for the first HR meeting and that counted. In the quiet after all the meetings and binders, I put the chipped mug on my shelf where I see it each morning and remember why I risked the fracture. The cost was real, and I accepted it because the people who would have been harmed if I stayed silent mattered more than the comfort of being liked. A year later, the snow fell slow and generous, and I opened my front door as if it were the beginning of something I'd been practicing for. The entry smelled like cinnamon and cedar, and I had already turned on the guest room heaters hours before anyone arrived. I took coats at the door and showed Mom and Dad to rooms where towels had been folded on the beds. It was strange and small and sweet to hear them call it warm without any edge. I set a place card that said Mom and another that said Dad at the center of the table, and the sight of their names there felt like a settling of a plate that had been wobbling. Olivia arrived late but steady, not triumphant and not defeated. She helped clear plates and didn't try to smooth the past with forced cheer. A few cousins stayed, some who had been silent the year before and some who had sent private notes asking if they'd hurt someone. The house felt full without anyone sleeping in the garage. I poured red wine and watched it settle in the glass, and when I lifted mine, I heard the clink and didn't flinch. I said simply, to ending stories that hurt people and telling better ones. It wasn't a speech, it was a promise and an invitation. People raised glasses with small smiles, some kept them close and thoughtful, others toasted loudly. The room held that mixture. Later, as dishes were cleared and lights dimmed, Olivia and I stood in the doorway of the kitchen. We didn't fix everything in a single conversation, but she said, "Thank you," and meant it in a way that wasn't tangled with pride. Mom put her hand over mine and squeezed once, and Dad just nodded in that quiet way that takes time to understand. The warmth in the rooms felt like the work I'd done finally landing where it mattered. The power I had shown them wasn't about the money or the titles. It was the quiet ability to choose what's right and to make sure people who can't shout get heard. I kept that promise for myself and for them, and I felt for the first time in a long while that the kind of power I wanted was the kind that heals. If this story landed with you, tell me where you're listening from in the comments and share your own moments of standing up. Subscribe and turn on notifications for more first-person family revenge stories. I'll be in the comments, reading and replying.